All right, we are going to go ahead and get started here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our monthly operator meeting. My name is Tyler Vallon, and I will be your host for today. Just a reminder, we will be addressing questions at the end of all presentations, but you're more than welcome to enter those into the chat as they come to you. All right, and first up, we have Chris Eisinger with Financial Assurance and Annual Contributions.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Tyler. I just have a quick announcement about financial assurance, your annual contributions. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. So hopefully everyone can see this slide. So with regards to annual contributions, this is applicable to operators who have option 3 or option 4 financial assurance plans as described in the rules, specifically Rule 702D, sections 3 and 4C. And for those who are unaware, with the option 3 and 4 plans, there is a annual contribution that's provided as either 5 or 10% of the total amount of financial assurance required, that will be provided over 10 or 20 years. So ECMC has set the deadline for these annual contributions to be July 1st. As we mentioned in the last operator meeting, our Form 3A is the process for providing these contributions, but the form was not fully implemented yet, the process. And so we have now, and operators can use the Form 3A to provide their contributions. When you log in and you start a new form, you should see the correct annual contribution amount is calculated based upon your latest approved Form 3. So to allow time for this initial implementation of this new process, we have set the deadline for 2024 to be October 1st for this year. In future years, for those contributions, we will be sending out reminders to operators in early April about the July 1st deadline. And so going forward, we will expect people to provide that by July 1st. For option 3 and 4 plan operators who have a Form 3A in process right now, meaning that it hasn't been fully reviewed and approved, we ask that you allow our staff time to finish processing these forms. We're moving as fast as we can with this, and we hope to have these processed in the next few weeks. And do that before you provide your follow-up, your first sort of annual contribution. So if you have any questions about your specific situation, because each operator is unique, we ask that you contact either Sharon Shepflin, who's our financial assurance specialist, or Debbie Lutz, who oversees bonding and financial assurance instruments. So that's what I had, Tyler, and we can take questions at the end. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chris. All right, and next up we have Diane McCoy on wellbore diagrams.
Can you hear me okay, Tyler?
Yes.
Great.
Are you able to see my screen?
No, not yet.
Sorry, one moment.
Yes, there we go. It's screen. So just jump right in here. My name is Diane McCoy. I'm going to talk a little bit about wellbore diagrams today and their purpose. So wellbore diagrams are required by various rules to be submitted to the state. They can come attached on different forms depending on what rule requirement you're trying to satisfy, and also the intent of the form. So the purpose of the wellbore diagram is to provide a visual representation of the proposed or current configuration of the well. The diagram should have a header at the top that includes, we want to have it labeled so we know what well we're looking at, the API number, well name, location, and then if this is a current or proposed drawing, and also the date of the drawing. For the diagram itself, it should include all permanent downhole features, and they should be incorporated into the wellbore diagram. So we want to know the hole, casing, size and information, depths, cement intervals, any perfs in the well, formation tops called off on the side, and then the depths of any permanent features within the well itself, such as bridge plugs, cement plugs, retainers, any fish, all that stuff should be drawn into the well. So again, it's a visual representation of the configuration. We don't want a generic kind of stick drawing on the side with tables with all the data on the outside of the well. We want to be able to look at this diagram and have an understanding of what the current configuration or proposed configuration of the well is. Next slide, please. There we go. Just going to highlight some common errors and issues we see with wellbore diagrams that have been getting submitted lately. So we have wellbore diagrams that are not to proper scale, diagrams that don't have items labeled, or that are not including all permanent features. Again, I'm probably going to say this 100 times during this presentation, but we want it to be a visual representation. So someone should be able to look at this attachment, see the wellbore diagram, and get an understanding of what the configuration is, what is downhole, and all of that should be drawn on the wellbore diagram. Next slide, please. So here I'm just kind of grabbed some wellbore diagrams that have recently been submitted to the state, and these are examples of poorly scaled wellbore diagrams. These 4 examples show too much detail on one end. You can't really discern what is going on in the well. Certain features might be missing. And then also, due to the scale, the ones that have the labels called out, the font is so small you can't even read it to have an understanding of what is being called out or what depths are being called out there. So these are just poorly scaled drawings. Next slide. Some other errors we're seeing is where the labels are overlapping each other. And so we had a wellbore diagram that looked like it could be a really good visual representation, but the call outs for the labels overlapped each other. So that information was not displayed. So you couldn't see what was actually being labeled there. So just making sure that the labels can be read. And then again, on that lower picture, this was what was submitted, and the font is small and blurry and not easy to read due to, I think, just the way it was generated. So these are just some issues we've seen recently. Next slide, please. And again, some common errors we're seeing is where only part of the diagram is labeled. So I think this is a pretty good visual representation. We can see, obviously the cement drawn, the perks drawn, the plugs and hole, but only a few of the permanent features have depths and labels called out for them. And so we don't have information about the other plugs down hole, the perk depths, the cement tops, the casing strings and hole. So just some information was missing on this wellbore diagram. So not all the features were identified. Next slide. So here is a generic example of a clearer wellbore diagram. And so we're looking for a header with all the relevant information. We are looking for details on the hole sizes, casing sizes, setting depths, any tops called out there, perfs, plugs. And so you can see you can look at this well, you can see where the surface casing is, you can see where the cement top is, you can see any production perfs that were in there and they're labeled, called out. If there's any plugs in there, they are labeled and called out, and just being able to get a quick overview of the well configuration by looking at this wellbore diagram. Next slide, please. And then just another example of a wellbore diagram we saw that was nicely scaled, had detailed information. The relevant labels were all clear to read and at the appropriate depth, highlighting what they were labeling. So we had all downhole formations labeled, all plugs drawn and labeled, hole and casing sizes called out and labeled, the cement visual, very clear to understand what is going on as well. That is all I had. I just wanted to highlight some issues we were seeing with wellbore diagrams, some what we're hoping to see on them, and if you have any questions, feel free to chat them in or email. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. Up next, we have Dita Osborne on mitigating methane emissions from marginal conventional wells.
Good morning, everyone. I am here to talk about the Methane Emission Reduction Program grant ECMC received to mitigate emissions from marginal conventional wells. This funding provides an opportunity to help well owners and operators voluntarily plug low-producing marginal wells. This is a quick overview of my presentation. First, I will go over the background and details of the grant. I will provide information about marginal conventional wells in Colorado. Then I will go into our planned program for the grant, which will cover stakeholder engagement and community benefits, the well prioritization process, operators volunteering wells to be plugged, methane emission measurements, well plugging and abandonment, reclamation. Next, I will talk about our 5-year project schedule, the importance of plugging marginal conventional wells, and I will conclude with a Q&A session. Next slide, please. The Methane Emission Reduction Program is an initiative that will drive critical methane emission reductions activity across the U.S. oil and gas industry as directed by the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act statutory requirements under Section 60113, which amended the Clean Air Act by adding Section 136. In 2023, under the MERP, funding was set up for mitigating emissions from marginal conventional wells. This $350 million in formula grant funding was awarded to 14 states to measure and reduce methane emissions from marginal conventional wells. Out of this, Colorado was awarded $12.6 million, and this funding provides financial assistance to states to help well owners and operators voluntarily identify and eliminate methane emissions from low-producing marginal conventional wells with disproportionately high methane emissions. The EPA, DOE, and the National Emissions Technology Lab, or NETL, have partnered to provide financial and technical assistance to the recipients of the award. Next slide, please. ECMC is in the early stages of building a program to administer these financial funds. We are currently identifying wells and operators who might potentially benefit from voluntarily plugging with us to relieve their cost burden to plug marginal conventional wells that are at risk or known to be high methane emitters. The funding provides an opportunity to reduce emissions, to get financial assistance to plug old wells, and to reduce financial liability. Next slide, please. So what is a marginal conventional well? It is defined by the IRS as an idle or producing onshore, vertical, or slightly deviated oil or natural gas well. It excludes highly deviated or horizontal wells. It has a known owner or operator, so orphan wells do not qualify for this program. And the well is producing less than or equal to 15 barrels of oil equivalent per day and or 90,000 cubic feet gas per day over the prior 12-month period. Next slide, please. This map shows the active well sites in the state. As of today, when I checked the ECMC website, there are 47,409 active wells. Next slide, please. This is a map showing where the marginal conventional wells are in Colorado. You can see that most of the wells are in the DJ and Piceance basins. Through analysis of our production data and information such as well type that we have in our database, we have determined that there are around 12,000 wells that meet the IRS definition of a marginal conventional well. Next slide, please. Here is some more information about the wells in the state. Like I said, there are around 12,000 that meet the definition. The well types are directional or slightly deviated. The average depth of the wells is around 6,870 feet. Several of the wells are located in disproportionately impacted communities. 2 of the wells are located on tribal lands, And there are 68 operators who own marginal conventional wells, and they range in size from owning one well to owning a few thousand. Next slide, please. This is the stakeholder and community engagement that has taken place so far. We have been coordinating with methane experts at CDPHE. We've worked with several DNR departments in the process. CSU is doing a marginal conventional well study that will include methane measurements to be used in the well prioritization process. Next slide, please. This is the engagement that is planned to take place in the next few months. We are planning outreach and engagement events in the communities where the wells are located. The DNR has an assistant director of tribal affairs that will help us to engage in conversations with tribal governments. We are planning more meetings with operators and are hoping you will all be willing to refer wells to the program. Our engagement with operators is key for the success of this program. Next slide, please. So ECMC has a community relations unit that will set up and run the stakeholder meetings. Throughout the project, we will be holding stakeholder engagement meetings and will provide updates on our website. The DOE requires that the list of candidate wells for the program be listed on our website so that operators can go there to view them and determine if their wells are eligible for the program. The application for the program will also be linked on ECMC's website later this year, and we plan to share the results and data from the program on the website on at least a monthly basis. Next slide, please. This is an overview of our planned well prioritization process. The data analysis will take place at least every 6 months. Per DOE requirements, the factors being considered are methane emissions with priority for the highest emitters, proximity to disproportionately impacted communities and tribal lands, demonstrated financial need determined by the size of operators in terms of production, public health and environmental factors, and equity among operators and regions of Colorado. Next slide, please. This is the 5-year project schedule and the components of it. So operator outreach and engagement to assess potential wells to be volunteered, continued community outreach and engagement, well screening, well prioritization, operators volunteering wells into the program, and then the field operations, there will be pre and post plugging methane emissions quantification, and that's to gauge the success of the program. And then there will be plugging and reclamation operations, and then public dissemination of results. Next slide, please. Oh, that's just a view of the project schedule. Next slide, please. So why plug marginal conventional wells? As wells reach the end of their producing life, they pose environmental and public health risks. Numerous studies have shown high levels of methane emissions leaking from these wells. Without proper maintenance, older wells can leak hydrocarbons into the ground, causing soil and groundwater contamination. And there are also the financial risks associated with marginal conventional wells. Operating costs are high and the returns get lower and lower. It is very costly to plug and abandon wells. This grant can alleviate the high cost of plugging, and this program can also prevent marginal conventional wells from going into orphan well programs and becoming a financial burden for state agencies and taxpayers. Next slide, please. In conclusion, I really appreciate the opportunity to present today. This grant provides an opportunity for our state to mitigate methane emissions, and I look forward to working with many of you to do this soon. Here is my contact information. Please reach out to me with any questions you may have, or if you would like more information on how to get involved with this program. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Thank you, Dita. Let's see, we will now move into the Q&A portion of our meeting. Just bear with me one moment. All right, and the first question we have, what rules can we review to make sure our WBD have all the correct information? I believe that question may be for Diane.
Yes, I'll take that one. So there are various rules that require the submittal of wellbore diagrams. We have it with Rule 308 for a Form 2. We have it, or Form 2 to deepen, recomplete, or like a sidetrack. Rule 420 with the Form 17 submittal, saying, what a current configuration. We have a wellbore diagram requirement for Form 6s. There are wellbore diagram requirements for injection wells and the 803 series. But I think what really comes into play is they don't call out the specific of what needs to be on the wellbore diagram within the rules in a lot of detail. It says all permanent features or all planned plugs or casing strings. So what we're looking for a wellbore diagram is that visual representation of the configuration of the current well or the proposed well. So highlight all permanent features that are currently downhole or that will be placed downhole. So the various rules call out the requirement to have the wellbore diagram as an attachment, but I think referring back to the slides today, once they get posted on the website, highlighting what permanent features must be included, such as hole size and depths, casing sizes, depths, any cement in the hole, plugs in the hole, perfs, all of those information that are permanent downhole features need to be drawn and included on the wellbore diagram.
Thank you, Diane. Next question, Dita, I believe this one's for you. Do you have a list of these high methane emitting wells?
So we're currently working on a study with CSU. We are also evaluating the data that we do have in our database, and we're also looking at ONGARE, which is the emissions inventory database that CDPHE houses. So we haven't completed the list yet. For the program, the DOE requires that the well prioritization list, the initial draft, be turned in on October 6th. So once we have that list, we will post it to our website.
Thank you, Dita. And how are you measuring methane at these wells?
So these will be direct measurements of methane. We will be contracting this out. Part of the grant program will be run by an administrative contractor that we will be hiring with the funding. And I believe the RFP for that should be going out within the next few weeks. And then they will do the vetting of the measurement contractors, the plugging contractors, and the reclamation contractors. So I just want to highlight that we are in the very beginning planning phases of this grant program.
Thank you, Dita. Diane, this next one is for you. Should horizontal wells contain information in their WBDs that is different from vertical wells?
No, the permanent features that are downhole in a well are going to be pretty similar between the two. It's just going to be the scaling that becomes more of an issue on the horizontal wells. And so I think that's on that one slide where I highlighted those four where there's everything is scrunched at the top, and then there's just very scrunched in either every joint or every perf highlighted down below, but it's drawn as a vertical diagram, and you can't discern what is really being drawn on that. Is some computer programs just are not generating very good horizontal wellbore diagrams. So the features that are still permanent features downhole, casing, hole, cement, perfs, all of those still need to be highlighted in a horizontal well. It's just making sure that that scale makes sense and that the diagram can be easily read and understood.
Thank you, Diane. I'll leave the chat open for just another minute or two for any additional questions that come in. But in the meantime, let's see. Oops. Oh no. Sorry, everyone, bear with me. Guess it's only letting me go to the beginning. In the meantime, here is the list of all our remaining operator meetings for the rest of the year. And if you'd like to be added to the operator email list, feel free to shoot me an email at tyler.valen@state.co.us. And this meeting's recording will be uploaded to our website as soon as possible, but if anyone needs any immediate access to any of the presentations today, go ahead and send me an email. And it doesn't look like we have any other questions that came in. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for presenting, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. This meeting is adjourned.